Jack, we've been hearing from Scott Allan today about his heart condition. From you as his head coach, just sum up what he's been through and how you've been able to support him.
Well, I think as he's spoken about, obviously today, the range of emotions that he's had to endure over the last few months. I think that, and I think there is a separation between the personal aspect of that and the professional part of it. So I think personally, first and foremost, difficult period, how you see your future and your family's future, etc. And then obviously the impact it has upon you doing the job that all players love to do. So I think we as a club have done well in our support. We've given him, I think medically, and the advice and information and expertise he's been offered to allow him to return to training and play has been good. I think from a staff point of view, in terms of keeping him engaged with us through that period and keeping him busy, I think that helped him as well. And thankfully now we're in a place whereby he's been part of the squad for the last 4, 5, 6 weeks, which is great for him first and foremost. So a real challenging period for him, and I think the fact that he's spoken so candidly about it today, with I think above and beyond, is to try and raise that awareness of the importance of continuing to be screened properly. I know there's an onus on us to do it as clubs, and that has changed significantly in recent times. But I think it's just that increased awareness again and the importance of players making sure they buy into that screening process as well.
From you as a head coach, Jack, when you hear something like that, that's passed to you, the medical advice, what are you thinking at that point in terms of what happens next in terms of the football?
I think if I take myself back to a number of months ago when I first had the conversation with Scott, I spoke to him immediately after he was given his initial diagnosis, if you like, when he was down in London. And I think there's an emotional aspect to that for both of us, because I think it was so raw for him at the time. And I kind of pride myself on the relationships I build with my players, and I think I understood the impact it was having on him immediately in terms of as a person. And to be honest, that was really as far as it went at that point, because there was at no stage that it drifted towards how that impacts upon us in the playing side of things, because Scott's a human being first and foremost. So I think that superseded any thought towards how that would impact upon us in the playing side. And I think we continued to have that. I never really at any point allowed myself to drift towards it being a bad thing for me not having this talented player at my disposal. It flips a little bit, because when he comes back to health and he's available again, then it is a major plus to have him in the squad again. But certainly at the time when he was going through that challenging period, it was much more about looking after him as a person. For you
now, how easy or difficult was it that first time you chucked him in? 3-0 down in a semi-final. I don't know if they thanked you for it or not, but is it one of them? Did you have any concerns about throwing him back in?
I think when we began when Scott began the process of trying to get back fit and ticking all the boxes that it had to do, so there was the communication, the process we had to build up at the club. So Nathan Ringer, head of performance, had to be he was heavily involved in that, and then my communication with him was regular to make sure that what I was doing on the training pitch with him, how I was using him, was then satisfying all the criteria. And I think when we got towards that last stage of it, we were, I had good conversations with Scott about the fact that I was still slightly apprehensive, just purely because I didn't want to put him in any danger in any way. And I suppose selfishly to the degree be deemed to be responsible for that. I mean, I think I had to have that conversation with Scott. So I think once we felt that we were meeting all the medical criteria, it was that final part, was making sure he was entirely comfortable where he was at. And, he said he was, which meant that I think we both had to accept it as being good, ready to go again. And I think the frustration is we've not been able to get, in these times it's difficult to arrange fixtures out with first team matches, which has probably just held back his progress a little bit. But it was I think he's spoken about it. It was a nice moment for him to get to. It would have been in better circumstances ideally, but I think to be back on the pitch first and foremost for him was great.
Jack, obviously he's only had the 2 brief run-outs so far. I know you're talking here about obviously difficult getting bounce games, but do you think he can have a sort of larger part to play before the end of the season?
Yeah, I mean, I think he's I think the fact he's been in the matchday squad for these number of weeks is testament to how we view him and the fact that he can contribute. I think in recent matches, obviously, our performances have been good, and the way the games have panned out, it's meant that positionally it's maybe not been a change we've had to make. But I think he understands, we all understand that to get him up to full match speed, we need to get him into games. I said it is difficult to organise games out with your match schedule at the moment, but he'll continue to be involved, and I envisage him playing a part in these remaining fixtures. Difficult to predict how big a part that will be, but certainly I think for both Scott and I, we're quite candid in saying anything we get this season is a bonus from where he was not so long ago, and I think he has been quite pragmatic about it and understanding that, because from not long ago he wasn't sure what would happen. Now he's back involved in the squad. He'll get minutes. And if we can get to the end of the season, he's still in a good place, then I think there's a little bit of a fresh start from him from then on in as well.
When you see what this condition has done to certain people that's had it previously, and it's obviously a very serious condition, I mean, was there ever a point where you thought it would be best for Scott to say, listen, don't go back, this is a serious thing, it could have massive repercussions for you and the sake of your family, just go away and hang up your boots and enjoy what you've had in your career so far? Was ever that conversation ever creep up?
Yeah, I mean, Scott and I spoke at length on a number of occasions through the different stages of it, and I think because he's not all the players in my squad are fathers, not all have children, and Scott does, and I think that gives you another different perspective on life. And I think he acknowledged that, and I think it was something that he was aware of. I don't think he needed me to highlight it to him. I think it was something that probably just brought a perspective into what is absolutely important. And I don't think Scott would have ever came back to playing if he felt as if he was putting himself in danger. I think once he had comfort medically from that, and as I said, I think it would have been remiss of me not to bring that up and speak about it, because I think we had to be entirely comfortable where we were at. And ultimately, as I said at the beginning, it is about us as people and human beings first and foremost, and not about being a footballer or playing football. And I think that's why when he's spoken about it, he's in quite a good place now with it, because to work through that whole process and take everything into account and believe that he's okay to play is a good thing. But certainly we had some fairly emotional conversations within it as well, because it's not a nice conversation to have with a 29-year-old man who's still. I still think I'm quite young. He's a lot younger than me.
Can I just ask as well that obviously you mentioned there about the sort of things, the checks I suppose you had to do to allow me to come back into training. Can you detail those a wee bit more? Have you got to have an extra doctor at training, any sort of thing like that, just to make sure that if he does hit any trouble, that you've got somebody sort of on the spot that can deal with it?
Yeah, we have medical staff on site anyway during training, so we have somebody on pitch and pitch side, and that support is there. Should not just for Scott but for any player. But I think in terms of making sure that he was fit enough, then we obviously monitored all the data that we get normally from training anyway. But it was just a case of us. I think there's the statistical data that you get provided with, and there's obviously then the anecdotal evidence that comes from Scott himself as to how he's feeling, because the data will provide certain evidence, but he also needed to be entirely frank, and hence the reason why, again, he's spoken about how he's, from a hydration perspective, he's monitored that a lot more carefully. His nutritionist had to change a bit. So there's things that we do as a club anyway, but then he's had to tailor accordingly. And, he's also got this added challenge of his type 1 diabetes that complicated it further. So I think we had to be stringent with what we did. I think as a club we had to be entirely comfortable that we were happy for him to be on the training pitch, because we did have those conversations about how we did not want to be put him at risk in any way and be responsible for being at risk.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Jack, how's the COVID situation? Is it no more incidents or any self-isolation?
No, we just had, obviously it was the club also released a statement earlier in the week that we had a player who returned a positive test, and we had to submit the appropriate evidence in the aftermath of that from a test and trace perspective that is obviously then given to the health board, local health board, to make the decision based on that. So they came back midweek and advised that we had no other players that we'd have to isolate because of that. We were probably, the circumstances of last weekend, I'm sure have helped us a little bit because our game was postponed. So that has probably fallen in our favour a little bit. But thankfully, yeah, it's only no more players have been forced to isolate because of the one positive test.
That fell in your favour for that respect, but in terms of keeping momentum going, I take it you would have wanted to have played.
Ideally, Sheila, yeah, we were keen to play the game. We wanted to try and we were quite happily waiting until the Saturday for a decision to be made. But in fairness to Roy and everybody at Ross County, I think they were they're very transparent and said that the pitch wasn't in a good way because of how low the temps have been. So once that happens, you make peace with it. But ideally, we would like to have played because of the form went in, the results were producing. But we had a couple of doubts for last weekend that I think may have struggled to play in the game that now are available, which has probably helped us a little bit as well.
You managed to maintain that gap over Aberdeen in third place. Is that really the focus now, just making sure you keep that gap there?
I think the good thing is I've been fairly boring and repetitive in my answers in terms of it's been about that focus, about what we're doing ourselves and the points total we're aiming for. And I think that the players are quite clear-headed in that respect. That I'm sure they speak within and amongst themselves about points differences, whether they're ahead or behind. Not so long ago that we weren't people talking about us being caught by the team in fifth position. So it shows you how quickly it can change. But certainly, all the dialogue we have as a group is about us focusing on what we do and continuing to win games and accumulate points. And I think now we understand with 10 games to go that they're there because they're a good team, and it's about continuing to prove that week after week. And we're in a good position at the moment, but we need to continue to play well to make sure we stay there.
Jack, just on the game tomorrow, speaking to Alex Gogic about it as well, it's probably not the time you want to play Hamilton because they seem to come up with results against everybody at this time of year.
Yeah, I think the record as a club and continuing to be in the Premiership is admirable under different managers, and we've continued to do that under Brian. It does seem that at this time of year they enjoy the challenge that had been written off, and certainly the recent results and performances have shown that again. So, I must admit that I never really find any game in the Premiership one that I'm comfortable about, because I think they're all challenging in their own individual ways. And even earlier in the season, Easter Road, we were really good for the first part of the game and find ourselves goals ahead, and yet then are holding on at the end of the game, which is probably in a in the one game alone shows that what Hamilton are capable of. So I expect a difficult game, but as I said, it's pleasing for us that we're in the type of form that we're in, both individually and as a whole team at the moment.
You've only got, including Saturday's game, 4 games to the split. Do you set any targets between now and sort of that time when the international break comes about?
Yeah, we've continually set targets through the course of the season. We've broke the season down into smaller chunks and then continually do work towards them. And in fairness, if you balance those smaller chunks out, we're not far away from where we hoped we would be and wanted to be. So we also, are acutely aware of where we would like to be come that split, because obviously post-split we know we're going to have some difficult matches. So it's just that focus on continuing to accumulate points. We believe we've got set fixtures coming out that we can continue to do that.
How is the squad looking? Obviously, you had the break last week, speaking about a couple of knocks. Are you hoping that perhaps a few guys when they've been involved this week?
Yeah, there's certainly a couple, Ben, who would have been touch and go for last weekend that have trained this week and are available again. Obviously, with the player ruled out through positive COVID test, and other than that, we're fit and healthy, which is good. We have this week in the training pitch, we've had a full week, which we've not had a lot recently, and then we've had, with the exception of that one player, a full complement of the training pitch as well, so which has been good. I think it's been a bright week for us as well, and it's been nice at this time of season to have a fit and healthy squad.
Jack, in terms of this race for third, is it, obviously you're in a good position, is it just sort of reminding the players how good a position they're in and, sort of you want them to have no regrets between now and the end of the season in terms of results?
I think that as a club, I've spoken about the want to make sure that Hibs are in this position year upon year, but also temper that with the fact that I read recently that they've only finished there 4 times in my lifetime, and that I genuinely was really surprised by that, and I think that is something that we're continually hammering home to the players to say that what they're doing this season is good, and if we can continue to do it, then they'll deserve praise, they'll get it for it, and I think they've had bumpy periods this season, and I think they've shown resilience and character to come through that and emerge from them. So I've got a good feeling about them, and I think a lot of them are looking forward to this part of the season that's coming up, knowing that there's a big prize at stake for them. Cheers, guys. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Jack. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Cheers. See you soon. Cheers. Thank you.